hear me? I'm looking at this picture. Mary came in and she was like, how come every time they send me a message, a picture of you for speaking, you're in a swimming suit? And I was like, I think that's spam. I'm certain that no one is sending a photo of me. Just so you know, it's a full dress to the ankles, modest. So, yeah, just so you know. That's okay. I'm happy. Whatever it is, it's good. Hi. Really quick, because this is up here, and because I'm wearing my Ask Me About 1946 shirt, I'm so excited that this week is right before next week, because it's the perfect, it always is actually, isn't it? My mother-in-laws are so smart. She was like, yeah, it usually is. This week is always ahead of that next week. She's so smart. But we're going to talk about feasting and together and dining today, which is so exciting because we're going to do that together next week. And then we're also going to, next week, be able to have a great time that we're together, but we're also learning. And as a teacher, that just really warms my heart. I love walking away smarter. But tonight we're going to talk about food, and I'm so excited. I'm a live to eat person, and then there are eat to live people. So some people, it's so weird to me that they really just wake up and they're like, I need to eat something. Or like people are like, I have the same thing every single morning for breakfast because it's just easy and I don't have to think about it. I'm like, thinking about what I'm going to eat is like one of my joys in life. I am so sad that that is not a passion of yours. But the Clark family, we like end one meal and then we are immediately thinking, what is the next meal going to be? Especially on vacation. Vacations are, we just eat. That's really, we could go anywhere. We're just there for the food. And actually, Brian and I like to talk about our favorite meals, like the ones that are super memorable. And then you think back and you're like, was it actually good? Or was it the circumstances, right? Like we always say, we have this time where like, remember that Italian nightclub we ate at Jimmy John's? That was so good. We've had Italian nightclubs a million times, but this one that we had in Omaha, Nebraska, after a Mizzou football game, it was the nourishment for the soul that we needed. And then there was another time that we were going through a rough spot in our relationship, and we went to Oceans of Fun, which is a big old water park in Missouri. And we had these chicken tenders, which I can only imagine were mediocre at best. And they were so good. And we still chase around that. You know, you like chase that. You're like, maybe this meal will be that, and it never is. But whatever. The very super basic meals provided just the nourishment that we needed, and then are forever etched in our memory. Something very basic and very simple. So think about your favorite foods. Like, what would you be thrilled to see if someone was like, come over to my house and I'm making this? For me, it's crab legs. I will eat so many crab legs. In fact, when we go to Las Vegas, this is not here, I'm just making stuff up. When we go to Las Vegas, I can't stop thinking about that. We always go to, that's a thing I also do. Twice we went, so now it's always. One of the buffets, Caesar Palace. We go to the buffet there, and I just literally just walk back and forth crab legs all day long. But again, something that perfect for me, my daughter is repulsed by crustaceans, all of them. Like she freaks out. She won't sit at the table if there's like shells and legs and stuff, which is funny. Or like if you had to pick, okay, so 4 meals, surf and turf, super exciting. Like the best salad bar, even if you do enjoy flesh, as Terry would say, even if you do enjoy meat, like the salad bar, a great salad bar can be just like perfect. Or sometimes it's just like a burger and fries, right? Or sometimes the Taco Bell late night crave box. It depends. It depends on what you are going for, but not the Mexican pizza, Alton says. I was thinking about different foods from around the world. Again, something that seems good to us but would be like completely repulsive well, seems repulsive to us, but would be completely wonderful somewhere else in another culture. And I learned that in Greenland, they have this dish, kiviak or something like that. I just put my own English, I don't know. It is basically these dead birds that they stuff into the body of a dead seal. It's sealed up completely tight, covered in oil to repel flies and maggots, and then fermented for 3 months. Fine aged delicacy. The pungent, toxic smelling bird meat is said to taste a bit like very mature cheeses or licorice. And then you eat it over the winter months when it's harder to catch food, and also at special occasions like Christmas. I love that every culture has their own thing, right? Like something that feels good and warm and welcoming and comfort food to us is not in other places, and vice versa. Something that we think, oh, that's awful, why would you do that, is actually something that they really enjoy. And it's cool to see how the world is made up of everybody. Then there's times where the food tastes really, really, really good, but it's like completely devoid of nutrients, right? Think like pretzels and like super pasteurized juices and candies and those kinds of things. We're like, oh, that was so good. But like nutritionally, there's nothing there, right? We're filling space, but we're not getting any type of benefit or value from that feast. And as we think about food and how it relates to church, we're going to kind of jump that bridge here and talk about the times in church when we've actually had similar experiences, where you walk into a church service and they do something that feels very, very normal, but it feels so weird to you. And you feel that like, what? I can't believe you do it this way. Or I can't, like, it feels like it would if someone served me dead bird stuffed in a seal. Or just things that I just don't know, right? I learned actually very loudly that in at least where I was, Catholic traditions don't end the Lord's Prayer in "For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever, amen." I didn't know that until we said the Lord's Prayer. It was probably at a funeral or a wedding, I don't know, but everyone else stopped. And then I very loudly said, "For thine," and of course everyone's like, "What?" But again, a time when I felt like, oh, I know this, and I didn't know it. And then everyone did one thing, and I did the other. And I even feel safe in churches, and it was still very awkward for me. Or the motions that we go through on our spiritual journeys that look and feel really good, but they don't really help us grow closer to God or encourage us to love our neighbors well. I think sometimes when people talk about their spiritual growth, it's very like, what can I do? What can I do? My relationship, right? Which is good. You have to feed yourself first, but then we also need to look out to our neighbors. Luckily, we have a great example in Jesus with interacting with people and food. And there's a lot of stories about Jesus sharing food with people. So I did a lot of learning in Luke. Also, I went to this conference in Dallas last weekend, and it was so wonderful. And I knew I was going to be talking today, but I didn't quite know what I wanted to say. And then I went to this conference, and the whole theme of this conference was called A Place at the Table. And I was like, perfect. I mean, obviously they chose it going into Thanksgiving. And I was sitting there thinking about you all and thinking about what we know. And I think we all know. We know that everyone is invited to the table. That is like deep in our souls. We know that. We fought for that. We also know that it's God's table. But as I sat there listening to people share about their spiritual trauma, I thought about what we're trying to create and how important it is that we are providing a meal for people that's palatable, right? That people actually want to eat. So there's all sorts of stories in Luke. We're actually just going to spend the whole time in Luke. About Jesus eating with people. He starts in Luke 5. We see Jesus eating with Levi, who is a tax collector. And of course, everyone's repulsed. Why in the world would you be going to eat with Levi? Because he is someone that we all hate. Why? How come you are spending time with him? And Jesus responds that because the sick people are the ones who need the doctor, right? Now, of course, Levi didn't realize he was sick, and that's another, that could be a whole other message for another time, right? Are we the sick ones? Are they the sick ones? How do we know? That's a different story. But again, he's there eating with the enemies almost. In Luke 7, Jesus is eating with a Pharisee when a prostitute just like walks right in. She invites herself in, and the Pharisee is baffled. She's like crying, and the scripture says she's like washing Jesus' feet with her tears and her hair. Like, that is a sight. And again, this Pharisee's like, clearly you're not the prophet, because you would know that this lady has some baggage. You would not be sharing this space if you knew her story. And again, Jesus says, actually, those that have the most to be forgiven are able to experience forgiveness the most. So again, Jesus interacting and sharing a meal with the uninvited, someone who just shows up, and you didn't even necessarily go out looking for that person, but they just walked right in. In Luke 10, it's Mary and Martha. And I love Mary and Martha because I am Martha, and I think we're all Marthas. I think we're all Marthas because Martha, if you don't know the story, Martha and Mary are ready, and Jesus is going to come and to them and have dinner with them. And Martha is running around. She's like Martha Stewart, I think. Maybe that's where Martha Stewart got her name. She's running around. She's trying to make the place perfect. She's like, Jesus is coming over. We're going to have dinner. I got to make the perfect spread. I got to make sure everything is perfect. I got to make sure the spot is right. Everything is perfect. And Mary, she's mad at Mary because Mary's just sitting there with Jesus, like literally just sitting there. And I'm sure Martha's like muttering under her breath, you know, like, are you kidding me? Like, do you not see? Like, she's doing, you've done it too, I know you have, when you're like unloading the dishwasher, but you're pretty sure it was not actually your turn to unload the dishwasher or whatever, so you do it very loudly, like huffing and puffing. My children do that, because that's not my job anymore, yes. But I think about that with us, right? Are we running around? Are we like killing ourselves and running around to try to create this space? And Jesus is saying like, woo, like, slow down. Like, who is here? Who is here? And slow down and focus on those people. Instead of trying to create this beautiful, big masterpiece, you might be missing what's right there, like what's right in front of you. And is our vision of what we want a gathering to look like actually distracting us from the importance of just being with people? In Luke 14, Jesus goes to the home of another prominent Pharisee, and he goes and he talks about a whole bunch of important topics. That's where he's like, is it okay if I like perform this miracle on the Sabbath? It is the Sabbath, but like this guy clearly needs my help. And then he says to the other people, like, if a kid fell in a well, you would help them, right? So he goes and he's talking about big topics, important topics of the day. Do we work on the Sabbath? Where do you sit? The places of honor at a table. Who gets the places of honor at a table? And who gets invited to that table? And then in Luke 14, there's a lot of role reversals that Jesus suggests as well. Like, if you come and you think you're supposed to be in the seat of honor, you actually probably aren't supposed to be in the seat of honor. That's a cool part. Again, whole other message. In Luke 19, this is like from our childhood, Zacchaeus, remember? The wee little man. And Jesus just invited himself over to Zacchaeus' house and was like, I'm going to your house, and we got to talk about some stuff. And I just can't imagine that, right? Like, if you're just like hanging out in a tree, and Jesus is like, I'm actually coming to your house. But also, the joy. Zacchaeus had a huge turnaround. He's like, okay, I'm so sorry. For anybody that I borrowed from, I will repay them plus some. The way that he responded to just that invitation of, hey, I'm coming to you to spend time with you, and the amount of change that created for Zacchaeus is pretty powerful. In Luke 22, that's the story of the Last Supper. And We're going to do communion together in a little bit, but I want to point out here too that Jesus uses symbolism at this meal to remind his followers that he's near and to remember him, because he knows I'm going to be away for a while, and this is a way for you to remember me. And he teaches, at that time, he teaches the importance of creating traditions to share with our community and how important those traditions are for building a community. In Luke 24, Jesus used dinner. So this is after he has died and he comes back and he's teaching. After his resurrection, he comes to two of his followers. They're on the road to Emmaus and they're talking, and Jesus shows up. They don't know it's Jesus. And he's like, hey, and he's showing them all of these things. This is what happened in the prophecies. And they spend the entire walk with Jesus on the road to Emmaus, but it wasn't until they sat down to have in like an intimate dinner setting that they were like, whoa, this is Jesus. And that's powerful, right? When we stop and slow down and we get to know somebody over a meal or just at a round table or just that constant interaction, even if we spent so much time with them, we don't get to really see Jesus. Even his own disciples who knew him didn't see him until that intimate setting was created. And then in Luke 24, again, two other followers come back, and they're going to tell the disciples, and Jesus is already there. They freak out a little bit, and they were like, a ghost. And he had dinner with them, which proved, obviously, that he wasn't a ghost, but also he was like comfort food for them. Like, you were our best friend, and you were gone, and now Jesus is this comfort food for his disciples. So going back to 14, this was the message of the whole weekend. The whole one was around the parable of the great banquet. And I think you'll find that you might recognize yourself in this parable. So I'm going to read it to you. I saved Brian from slide making. He was like, do you have slides? And I was like, do I? It was late, so I don't. Okay, starts in Luke chapter 14, verse 15. When one of those at the table, so Jesus is getting ready to tell them of this parable about the banquet.